Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Telemanca Review. It's 8:15, and it's 11/11/2024, November 11th, 2024. And tonight we're just going to relax our way through another podcast. And tonight I want to do something of a classic podcast, and probably one that I should have done a long time ago. I guess you could say that the reason I did not do it was that I made certain assumptions about the listenership. And I suppose that now, as I've evolved in this podcast, I have to be more deliberate in what I'm doing and more concise and expressive in terms of what I'm trying to articulate. And that's brought about the podcast tonight, which I'm calling Cosmology. Okay? So I'm just going to ease into it. Had a wonderful sauna today, so I got much better wood now. So I've been burning a lot of scrap wood from under the pastor's house over by the church. He's got all this scrap wood from his house build, and me and my wife go over there and take it and then just cut it up into small pieces with a machete. And it's very thin wood, and I guess it was used for I don't know, like some sort of wood flashing or something, but it burns quickly. And the one thing you want to do with the kind of sauna I built, the one thing you do not want to do is open it up mid-sauna, because you're going to let smoke into the room, and then you're going to be breathing smoke, and with the steam and the heat and everything, it's extremely uncomfortable. So the key is to get a good burn going and make sure that that burn is going to last 40-45 minutes, and that you don't have to open the door to the propane tank, which has been converted into the wood burner for the sauna. And so lo and behold, we got around to doing that a few days ago, and we got some nice wood and cut it into blocks with a circular saw. And then I soak it with either kerosene or diesel, and let the diesel or the kerosene soak in a little bit, and then it just sort of auto lights. And then so you light it up. And then, once I get the sauna going, I come in and I watch a YouTube video for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. I might go out and check it at the 15-minute mark to see how it's burning. But you want to get it right at that point where you've got the beginning of the formation of coals, and you've also still got flames lapping. Because if it's just the flames, it won't be hot enough. And if it's just the coals, it won't be hot enough. You have to have both. And then when you get to that sort of super hot temperature, that's when you pour the plastic bowl of water on top of the stones on the backside, the top side of the propane tank, and it just hits and sizzles. And the steam just shoots up, and you sit up on the top bench and you get hit by this wave of steam, and it's just beautiful. I mean, I can't do without a good sauna anymore. And I'm starting to wonder how I ever did without it, actually. For those of you who don't sauna, I don't know who invented this, man. I know the natives had sweat lodge and everything, but I think it was the Finns, one of those Scandinavian countries, that invented the sauna. That's how you say it in Spanish. Sauna. It's basically sauna, but spelt in a Spanish way, or pronounced in a Spanish way. Sauna. And my wife takes one once in a while, like maybe once every 10 days. She'll go in. I'll come out, and I'm just soaking with sweat or water, because I rinse before I come out. I wash in there. There's a drain. And I come out with a towel around my shoulders and a towel around my waist, and I tell her, I said, there's still another good 15-20 minutes of hot burn in there if you want to get a quick sauna in. And sometimes she'll go in, and sometimes she won't. But every time she does, she just loves it and just goes on and on about it for a day or two. And then, but I don't know, it's one of those things where getting into the habit of it is, I don't think, something that she's going to be able to do. But anyways, I just absolutely love it, the old sauna. And I'm going to add to it as well. So what I'm going to do next is there's another room I have built out of earth bags, and it was originally built as the bathroom. And since the sauna is working so well, I'm going to build like a pure steam room. And for the steam room, I'm just going to have a steam pipe, like 1/4-inch steam pipe coming in through the earth bag wall, seal it off with cement and lime. And the hole I make to get it through the wall, because the walls are 22 inches thick, right? And when you want to make a hole, you drill through them. And then just on outside, I'm going to have just like a propane burner and just a big metal water tank. And I'm just going to boil water and just have a steady stream of steam going in there. And so this one will just be a pure steam room. And then I'll have the sauna room, which is wet and dry heat, and then the steam room, which is just wet heat. So I'm turning this whole place up here into some like Russian bathhouse or something. It's quite nice, and it's quite lovely indeed. Okay. So first let me say that I read every comment that comes in by email, by Facebook, by Skype, and on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Substack. So generally, any morning I wake up, I've got anywhere from 5 to 10 comments to read about the podcast the day before. And I thank you all for commenting. It's very gratifying. I appreciate it immensely. I will mention also at the beginning of the podcast that the books are available. I'll be doing an audio copy of The Devil in Us fairly soon, now that I've got the new mic. I have one other project to do before that, but that'll be very interesting for you folks as well. It's a friend of mine, Greg, and he's got a book on first contact. It's absolutely fascinating. And that and a documentary called Ariel I watched today, which is a town in Zimbabwe, and a podcast I watched today on the Danny Jones podcast, which is also called Concrete Podcast with a K. Fascinating. It was by the guy who made the documentary Ariel, and this took me right back into the world of UFOs and John Edmonds, who I miss dearly. And this documentary referenced the work of John Mack, which I referenced in Stardust Ranch. And as I watch more and more of this UFO stuff, I'm starting to understand why Stardust Ranch just keeps selling. It sold like 52 copies last month. Now, keep in mind, you all know the world we live in. Most things are bought because people are conditioned to buy them through advertising. And this book has just been selling month in and month out for 5 years now. And John's been dead since 2022. He also died in that calamitous year I lost Alan and my father. 2022 was a year of great death for the people around me. And what I realized watching some of these documentaries is that John and I, we really nailed Stardust Ranch. Like, we nailed it. Like, if you ever wanted to explain the UFO phenomenon to anybody, and they said, well, why do you believe that? The book to give them would be Stardust Ranch. And no other book does that. You can give them a Rich Dolan book about secret Air Force technology that the public doesn't know about, and your skeptical friend about UFOs will go, You can give them a spooky book about abductions or something, like Whitley Strieber or something, and they'll go, But what Stardust Ranch does is it puts a big bow around the whole phenomenon. And it's absolutely fascinating the way we did that. Now, you may find it strange, given that I'm the author of the book, to be commenting on it like it's somebody else's work or an object that I didn't create, but that is the creative process, right? That it's the creative process, like the process of experiencing the divine, is so proximal to you, to your being, that you can't really get any objective perspective on it. It just is what it is. You write it, you finish it, and I mean, don't get me wrong, there are benchmarks by which you can stress test the quality of what you're writing, both as a story, and you can do that by chapters, have people read sample chapters. You can get a sense of how good it is line by line, just by the energy or tension in the lines. But you really, every book, no matter how many I write, I never know until they're done, and until a few months after they're done, like what I did in the book. It's a very fascinating and mysterious process, which is why I like it, right? Which is precisely why I like writing so much. It's because it is mysterious, and it's because it is spiritual, in that it just happens through this creative process that very difficult to explain. So cosmology is basically a kind of conceptual map, if you will. I mean, somebody can look it up. I'm not going to, well, why? It's become a hallmark of the Talamanca Review, right? Why don't I look it up? I don't care if that odd fellow said, Bruce, we know what cosmology means. Well, you can't speak for everybody. And between all the platforms I distribute now, I have about 500 listeners per podcast, which is modest but good. But they're dedicated listeners, which is interesting. So, according to Wikipedia, cosmology is a branch of physics and metaphysics dealing with the nature of the universe, the cosmos. The term cosmology was first used in English in 1656 in Thomas Blount's Glossographia, and in 1731 taken up in Latin by German philosopher Christian Wolff in Cosmologia Generalis, general cosmology. So it's a conceptual map, okay? And what I realized today, listening to the documentary and the podcast, and let me just get you who that podcast was with. Boy, that's slow. Am I going up okay? No, that's remarkably slow tonight. Holy cow. Well, I'm just going to shut this down then. Yeah, that's very slow. Let me see if I can change that at all. I think maybe disconnecting from the VPN will speed it up a bit. Yes, that has sped it up quite a bit. Hold on a sec there. It's because, I don't know, I'm in the rainy season. Now I've got... Wow, that's odd. Okay. So, cosmology is a kind of conceptual map, okay? And I realized watching this documentary on the UFOs that, and I've experienced this ever since I wrote Stardust Ranch. Like, I can tell you, a lot of people are not open to the idea of extraterrestrials and UFOs, and a lot of people who should know better, okay? Now, the main obstacle to engaging the UFO topic is entrenched religious programming, okay? And so when people get that stuff into their head, especially if they have spiritual experience, okay, so if you're a serious Christian, you pray every day, you fast several times a year, you're very serious about fasting, about prayer, You go to prayer revivals, you study your Bible, you ask God for help, and you have multidimensional experiences. And what is a multidimensional experience? It's something that comes into your timeline, but appears to defy the normal law of time, manifestation, physics, or coincidence. Like it just comes into your life, and you prayed for something on a Monday, and on a Wednesday there it is. And it's just like, now you can look at that scientifically if you want. You don't have to bring God into that. Human consciousness is constantly in a state of manifestation. The ecstatic state of belief or faith can heighten manifestation, though. And I don't mean to objectify and turn religion, the sacred for some person, into a kind of pornography and, deconstruct it like Da Vinci digging up fresh buried bodies to get anatomy. I mean, I'm not trying to be a ghoul here, but I am trying to define my cosmology, and I believe that my cosmology will end up being important for you as well. So if you have a lot of religious training, you're not going to be able to receive the idea of UFOs very easily. And I would say that the one defect of religious training is the cowardice to have multidimensional experiences because you think everything is demonology. And this idea is getting more and more rampant now. Okay? And it is true. There are horrible things that can get into your head and get into your psychic space and make you think about horrible things and make you feel badly, and in some instances, take you over as an organic being and control your body and control your thoughts, with you sitting in the back seat watching the whole thing like a hostage. These things are real. They happen. They happen quite frequently, actually. Schizophrenia is an example of it, of a contested body in terms of consciousness representation. Schizophrenia is a form of contested ownership of body and consciousness. There's my definition of schizophrenia. And I went over this in another podcast, so I'm not going to go over it again. It has to do with Jerry Marzensky and my friend Daniel Flynn, the schizophrenic, and the other schizophrenics I met through him. And this is a very important thing about my cosmology, which differs from other people's cosmology. Mine is defined by personal experience. If I believe something, I'll tell you I believe it. Okay, I'll say, look, I don't know if this is true, but I'm inclined to believe it. If I know something, I'll tell you I know this for myself. Now, why do I have to qualify for myself? If you know something, Bruce, do you know what the color blue is? Yeah. The light on my notebook computer for the camera right now is blue. Bruce, do you know what an elephant is? Yeah. It's about, 2 tons. Has a big hose for a nose, largely vegetarian and very defensive of its young, and one of the most dangerous things in the jungle for any human that comes across it if it's with young and it feels threatened. So I can say, yeah, I know what an elephant is. I know what the color blue is, and we can all agree on that, right? I don't think anybody would really put up too much resistance to those ideas. Now, when you get into non-physical things, everything changes. Everything absolutely changes. And I'll tell you why. I'll give you one aspect of why. And I said this to a friend on a Skype call this afternoon as an example I was trying to give him, so I remembered it. So imagine you live on another planet, let's say 1,000 light years from Earth. And your civilization develops a technology to disassemble one of your people, one of the beings on your planet, technologically project that person 1,000 light years away to the planet Earth, which you became aware of and you want to go explore. You can only send one person at a time, and you want to build up an understanding of this planet. There's a slight problem with the technology in that it cannot guarantee the location on Earth you're going to manifest, or the time on Earth in which you're going to manifest. Okay? So the first guy gets projected, and he comes to Earth, and he visits, let's say, California in 1845. So you've got cities starting to be developed, you've got the Chinese coming over, maybe the railroads being built. He stays for 2 days, and then through the technology is pulled back to his home planet, disassembled, pulled back, and reassembled on his planet to report. Now the next guy they send appears in 2000 BC by the River Nile in Egypt. He sees camels. He sees the pyramids. He sees a magical civilization. He's pulled back. They sent a third guy. And the third guy, he gets projected into the last instance of Atlantis, which was about, let's say, 12,600 years ago. And he sees something completely different. I won't even bother trying to describe it here. Now, all three of these astronauts or cosmonauts from this other planet, 1,000 light years away, are called into the political and scientific committees to report. And the scientific and political committees want to form a picture of the planet Earth. The first guy speaks, the second guy speaks, the third guy speaks. They all contradict each other. The committees are left to believe that maybe they got sent to different planets. They're so disparate in what was experienced because they were different times and different locations. Okay? Because the spread of life on this planet is absolutely staggering. It goes from cannibalism in Papua New Guinea to the technological heights of where we're at today in 2024 in Western Europe, North America, Beijing, Shanghai, Tokyo, all the way to the cannibals in Papua New Guinea, eating other human beings and living in thatch huts. What would you say about planet Earth? Okay? What would you say about it? Now take that example and then multiply the complexity of the situation by 100, and that's what it's like when two people go to the astral plane and come back to Earth to report. Times it by 100. The astral plane is much bigger than the physical plane. Time works differently. Okay? There's all kinds of expressions of life on the astral plane, from heavenly to hellish. Antiquated things are on the astral plane. Antiquated things we don't see physically anymore, like dragons and things like that. They're there on the astral. Your dead relatives are there. If they haven't reincarnated, they're there. Okay, so how do you explain this to everybody? How do you explain anything to anybody? So cosmology is very difficult to explain. Now, I have come to believe, and I don't say I know this, I'd say I'm 80% to knowing it. And because I can't say I know it 100%, I'm forced to say I believe this. Because I think that there is merit to the scientific method. I think that there is merit to fact. I think that there is merit to objectivity. And objectivity for me includes internal space in meditation and lucid dreaming. Okay, so I think you should approach your spiritual life the same way a scientist approaches physics, chemistry, or biology. I think you should do experiments. I think you should keep your own results in a journal. And I think you should build your knowledge base up over years. And I think you should do it with discipline and consistency. It should be scientific. In an ideal world, nobody would believe anything. They would either say, I know, or I don't know. But we live in a world where everybody believes things. And those beliefs, if they become aggregated into a large enough collective, and I'm not picking on this one group, but I'll use it again, Christianity. The aggregation of that collective belief and the muted sharing of experiences with exorcisms, deliverances, conversions, as those stories begin to spread, and they're spreading in a big, big way now on YouTube, you begin to form a collective consciousness that is not fact-based, is highly chauvinistic, but because of the strength of the collectivity, it presents itself as fact. Okay? And this is what we call social consciousness. Okay? So if you were to get in a time machine and go back to France in 1750 and look at one of these ponces with rouge on his, chalk white makeup on his face, little red rouge circles and a white wig, and he looks ridiculous because you're from 2024, but if you said, hey buddy, you look fucking ridiculous, he would laugh at you. He wouldn't even find it to be an insult because he's the height of that culture. That is the highest expression of status and fashion, even though he looks fucking ridiculous. Okay? The chauvinism of that collective agreement that this is how a man of title and position should dress becomes a de facto fact. This might be one expression of the physical manifestation or the horseshoe effect of an egregor in metaphysics. Something that one very powerful or a small group of powerful individuals or a large group of harnessed consciousnesses creates something on the astral. It comes alive because humans create life on all dimensions. I don't know if you know that. It's not just, if you think something long enough, it'll take on a life of its own. Okay? So we don't just create when we mate with a female and produce a baby. We create on the astral as well. And these creations, some of them, we can call egregors. And they're created on the physical. They go up to the astral. And they come back down to the physical as paranormal phenomenon, even though they're not related to the gods. They're not related to God. They're not related to angels. They're not related to demons. And they're not related to extraterrestrials. So throw that into the basket. Okay? So where are we at now? You got angels. You got demons. You have dead human beings. You have astral life forms we don't know about on the physical. You've got, did I mention the extraterrestrials already? Yeah, you've got the egregors. You've got all the gods as well, who can express themselves in the astral and the physical, but only on the physical, generally only through a willing human accomplice. Okay? Remember what I said in previous podcasts? For anything to happen on this dimension, it has to have human agency, boots on the ground. It comes through the thoughts and experiences of an individual, and that living individual champions it in their community. And that championing of the idea could be something like writing a book, composing some music, introducing something new to people, but it came from above, and it came through the individual and came into the physical. But you've got most of the pantheons are real, by the way. The Greek gods are real. Bob taught me that. The Norse gods are real. Greg taught me that. There are other gods that are real, which I've experienced myself. The Kabakar back here in the jungle, I don't know if I'd call them gods, but they've got principalities they work with back there, and I have felt them. They've also got life forms that are in and out of the physical, and they can become physical, and then they can, what would the word be? John Edmonds gave it to me for the Greys. They can phase back out of the physical and go back into the fourth dimension. There's a lot of things that can do that. This explains the dogmen in many ways. This explains Bigfoot. Okay? So remember, tonight's podcast is Cosmology. And it's important to have a bit of understanding. Now, you'll find a commonality in every serious seeker and anybody who's come to any wisdom and any experience in this life, real experience with the multidimensional reality, okay? All of us go through a phase in our life where we do intense study. And the study is diverse. You're not just studying one thing like the Gospels or the Bhagavad Gita, or you can do that and you can end up being a dogmatic Hindu, or you can end up being a dogmatic Christian, or you can end up being a dogmatic Buddhist. And there, believe it or not, even though it's a path of pure meditation, dogma has crept into Buddhism. Okay? Who'd have thought that was even possible? Welcome to the human condition. Why would I say such a thing? I am personal friends with a devotee of Vipassana Buddhism who has spent a decade in almost pure meditation. He's always in a meditation retreat. He travels the world staying in Vipassana centers. 4 years ago, he went to ordain in a Thai forest monastery. So a lot of the Buddhist monasteries, they'll put in very remote locations. He went to ordain into this Thai Buddhist monastery, and the abbot said that he had to get vaccinated first. He knew the vaccine was bad. He wasn't stupid. And so he went up the chain of command in the local and then the regional and then the global Buddhist structure, wrote articles that went all through the Buddhist community. Tens of thousands of Buddhists read his articles. And the monastery would not relent, and he was never ordained. Now, 4 years later, going on 5 years later, as we go into 2025, the Buddhists are very embarrassed. Where was the wisdom? Where was the Dharma? Where was the courage? Okay? So dogma has crept into Buddhism too. So the new methodology for spiritual advancement is multicultural. Everybody I know who's done really well in unfolding spiritually has done so in a multicultural way, meaning that they have engaged more than one religion, more than one spiritual system, and engaged it both in study and in practice. Okay? I've reached a point, I've been operating this way since I was 17. My first 5 years, I stayed with one very consistent form of meditation. I still do that, 43 years later, that one form of meditation. But I've gone all over. You've heard my stories. I mean, I had a Taoist master who was a personal friend of mine when I lived in Taiwan. I had an esoteric Buddhist master friend in Taiwan who was also a rotating professor in microwave engineering, I believe it was, at Princeton. This was one of the most fascinating guys you could spend a Sunday afternoon having tea with and talk for 4 hours. Just absolutely fascinating guy. And what did this do for me? And more importantly, what did this do for my cosmology? It gave me authority because everything I know experientially now, and I know objectively. Okay? But I'm not a devotee of anything. Okay? So I've had 4 or 5 significant extraterrestrial experiences in my life. 2 were visitation. 2 were the seeing of craft. 1 when I was a child, 1 when I was about 38, both times with witnesses. I've had meditative visitations from races I've never seen before. Like, I've never seen them represented in a movie, in a TV show, nothing. There's no way my imagination could have concocted the features that appeared in my mind's eye when I was in samadhi, in complete relaxation, not asleep but unconscious of your body is my definition for samadhi. That may not necessarily be the Vedic definition of samadhi, so I'll give you my definition. This dude pops in, and never seen him before in my life, and I go and do some research, and I find out, yeah, this race actually exists, and I was actually visited by them. Do I become a UFO guy? Am I going to Vegas to UFO expos? No. Why? Because only idiots and losers go to those things. No offense if you've ever been to one. But don't chuck out the UFO stuff, because you're building your cosmology. And then what do? I write a book about the devil and the demonic legion after being introduced to them and working with them as muses to produce a book about the 20th century, because they don't want to be blamed for everything. So I acted as their advocate. Now, there are Christians who may come across this podcast in the future and think I am the greatest heretic who's ever lived. But I am speaking from experience. And how do I know it was real? Because everybody close to me called me up in the 6 months, mainly the first 2 months I was working on that book. Half dozen people called me up, telling me they had dreams with demons. And I would have to tell them, yeah, it's because you're psychically connected to me and I'm working. But it was also the demons proving out to me, so I had no mental doubts about what I was writing. So how do you get to a point where a consciousness works the way mine does? 40 years of study and spiritual practice. Okay? And I'm not even a master of anything. I'm just still a journeyman, but I'm a journeyman at many things. If there's anything I've come close to mastering, it might be storytelling. Okay? Sip of coffee. Why am I doing this podcast tonight? Why am I doing a cosmology podcast? Because it's important. Because I have a feeling things are going to kick off in a big, big way in the near future. And if you don't have a grounding, a way of understanding the phenomenon, you're either going to go crazy, you're going to become hysterical, or you're going to go catatonic. You're going to go into shock. Okay? And you need to know that everything is real. Angels and demons are real, and extraterrestrials are real. Just because they're both non-physical, just because something is non-physical, meaning it doesn't have a body, it doesn't come through the womb of a woman, doesn't mean you have the right to put the demon label on all of it, or the angel label on all of it if it gives you a little tickle in your belly and makes you feel good. That's just fucking lazy and ignorant. Okay? It's just lazy and ignorant. You should always keep your mind open. I've had an open mind, and I've walked into situations in my life, you know, and you're never going to get hurt. You're never going to get snared by wolves, literally or metaphorically, in the woods. That's all that, if you live from the heart out, you'll be taken to good places. You'll have, some of the experiences will be negative, but they're there to teach you, okay? And negativity is the best teacher in the universe. You're not going to find anybody who's come to any spiritual consciousness who did not have negative experiences, who did not go through extreme mental and emotional suffering. Everybody does. Because the very nature of seeking more in life means, what does it mean? It means you're not happy with the status quo. And if you're not happy with the status quo, what's that? It's a state of suffering. So, and it just amazes me when I see these people out there and, oh, God's going to save your life. You're going to be so happy. You'll never be sad. Are you fucking kidding? That's just ridiculous. So let's keep up with the cosmology, because there's a lot to get done in the last 10 minutes here or so. So on top of everything I've already mentioned, then you have sort of astrophysical principalities. You will have an astral principality over a certain geography of the world, and the number of principalities governing the geography is determined by the complexity and number of the people living in the region. So the cannibals in Papua New Guinea may have one negative principality governing their reality down there, and he's cycling the karma, the experience they have to go through, okay? New York might have a dozen, okay? A country like France might have 100. France is a very complicated place on the astral, by the way. That's why they made all the freaky characters in The Matrix French. I kill myself doing these podcasts sometimes. And then you've got agents of the divine and agents of negativity working in the time plane above the fourth dimension. The agents of negativity are working to sabotage certain timelines, and the agents of constructive unfoldment are trying to maintain timelines and outcomes. And there's a war in that region too. Okay? I mean, when you're a creator and you create a layered reality like the one we live in, the physical, emotional, memory, and mental, which is and they're all separate dimensions, one finer than the one preceding it, okay? Like layers of an onion, and more expansive, okay? You might say that feeling correlates to the solar system. You might say that memory correlates to the galaxy. And you might say that mind correlates to the universe. Okay? So you know the old adage that micro and macro, what the yogis say, a human being is a microcosm of the entire universe. That's it right there. I just gave it to you. Okay? It's more complicated than that, but I'm just a guy doing a podcast from an earthbag house. And, if you want to learn more about it, then study more. And there's a lot of people out there that they're just not putting... And as I watch these podcasts, even the big ones, what I'm noticing more and more, whether it be the Concrete podcast, whether it be Joe Rogan, and whether it be Sean Ryan, the ex-Navy SEAL, doing podcasts as diverse as interviewing Father Rehill of the Catholic Church, talking about exorcism and stuff like this. What I noticed is it's not that there are any errors in the podcast. There's a line I wrote, and this is my line, but I wrote it in the Galactic Historian, the Bartzis book. I said that to understand something correctly, you have to understand both the context and the details. Okay? And what I notice when you get into what we'll call subject matter experts, and I do not doubt that Father Rehill is a subject matter expert on exorcisms, and he's kicking out what he believes to be, and he believes that he doesn't know this. He believes it. So this is another interesting thing, okay? So stay with me here. You're in a body. You have non-physical phenomenon that defies the laws of physics. You go to somebody's house, you're told they're possessed, they levitate, stuff moves around the room. I've seen all this. I've never seen anybody levitate. I've seen stuff move around. Stuff like that happens around me sometimes when something is just fucking with me, right? And immediately the average human being listening to or watching that podcast, immediately the context into which they frame this person, Father Rehill, the phenomenon and all this, is God, the devil, angels, demons, heaven, hell. And it's really, when you expand your context, it's little more than a squatter on the astral plane connected to a body being somewhere they shouldn't be, just like people squat in homes, just like the illegal immigrants in the United States are trying to squat and take over people's homes in the United States. That's my context. So it's not that I would disagree with Sean Ryan or Father Rehill that, yeah, this possession is taking place. You call it a possession. There's a squatter in that body, is what I would say. Okay? It's not heaven and hell. It's the astral plane. It's a multi-dimensional mosquito bite, is what it is. And if you get the context wrong, it's pretty serious. Because if you don't have the right context, how could you possibly have the right details? You can't. And this is what we're going through now. We're changing everything now. I have a prediction to make. I say prediction because it's an educated guess. And I hate the word prophecy, because I hate the culture it comes. I don't hate, but I dislike the culture it comes out of. It's supposed to be loving, and it's created more war and death than anything else on the planet. Here's my prediction. There is going to be a spiritual renaissance and revolution in the West. And we are going to redefine spirituality in a way not the Buddhists haven't been able to do, the Vedic yogis haven't been able to do, the shaman haven't been able to do, nobody's been able to do. Because what we do best in the West is we deconstruct, demythologize, and literalize things. And that task needs to be applied to cosmology, gods, and God. And nobody's gotten around to it yet. I'm trying in my books. I'm trying. But I'm just one guy. And maybe not that good at it. I don't know. But I predict this is going to happen in the 21st century. That the West, and specifically the United States of America, is going to take over the God game in a way that even the advanced yogic masters and all of these people in the East are going to go, yeah, I mean, you guys nailed that the way you nailed cell phones. Way to go. But until that happens, there's going to be no peace on this planet. And that's a new cosmology is the only thing that would, a new universal and proven cosmology is the only thing that would make globalization possible. Okay? Globalization led by merchants, bankers, it's hell on earth. Okay? But it doesn't mean that we should completely abandon the concept of globalization. It's inevitable at this point. It is inevitable at this point. Our transportation is going to get better. In short time, we're going to be living in a world where you can go from my earthbag house in the Talamanca Mountains here to Tokyo in 20 minutes. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I just know they're going to do it. I've seen it in my awakened imagination. Okay? And so globalization is going to be a reality. And a global human culture is going to have to come about. And if we allow the negatives to do it through commerce, slavery, consciousness suppression, technology suppression, all we're going to do is compound the misery of the world. This is the battle of the ages we're in now. And let me be clear, Trump is not here to solve anything on this level. He's here to end the Hebrew narrative, whether he gets it or not. He's Harimabif. He's going to get the temple built. I built the temple. It's a beautiful temple. Yet the first two were garbage compared to the temple I built. Just imagine it, okay? But once it all goes down and it gets externalized, we're going to go, oh, fuck, was that all it was? Right? It's like a 14-year-old blue-balling himself looking at Playboy magazine who's never had sex. This is what God is to these people. They're fucking idiots. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been